Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, but this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. Back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, but this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
Welcome everybody to the FPV news with myself, JB, and it's Blunty.
And me. It's Blunty.
Yeah.
How's it going?
How you
How's it
doing,
going,
Blunty?
Good.
Very well as well. And I am happy to be with you this Tuesday evening, right before we go on a little hiatus for 2
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah, you're taking a trip somewhere. You're going to do some work or something. So you got
That's
2 weeks.
true.
We got 2 weeks off. Are they going to miss you? When are we going to be back? We're going to be back for your
Yeah.
live stream. You'll be back on a Sunday.
So I'll be coming home on the 19th. So I'll probably stream on the 20th, but I can't promise you. I might be like, hey, I've been gone for 2 weeks. Maybe I will like say hello to my family.
All
Probably
right.
that would be like the responsible thing to do. I would say I'll be back on the 21st for sure for Monday night.
Okay.
And of course the 22nd for the news.
Cool.
But no need to think about such things anymore now that we've got that out. Because
Yeah.
we got some big news for this week as well. What are some of the highlights? What are you looking forward to most this week, Blunty, in the news?
Well, we are going to go over my New Year's survey results. I know some people have been asking about that, so we'll take a look and see where everything fell for the survey.
Yeah. And speaking of things falling, I can't tell if this is already linked or if the Discord has just given it to us, but there's some footage of a giant drone falling on some people during a celebration in, I think it's India. So that'll probably be at the end in our news segment that you came up with, which you're calling "It's Barely News."
Yes.
It's just a collection of stories like that are barely news but are sort of worth mentioning. So
Yeah.
that'll be something. What else? What else are you looking forward to this week?
Well, we've got lots of good stuff. One thing is we've got a pretty cool little intro to FPV drone racing by
Mm,
Mako Reactra. We'll
mhm.
take a quick look at that, but that's a nice little video, a summary, kind of a presentation, I guess, is what you would call it.
Yeah.
But pretty neat.
Mako Reactra is in the Flow State film. That's where I know her from. Just realized I wasn't sharing my screen with you like we usually do, Blunty. I just
Ah,
let you know I just started that. Yeah. And I'm excited to tell everybody about some new information about BLHeli32. Both Chris Rosser and Ivan Efimov, the Betaflight dev, have done doing some ESC testing and come up with some recommendations for best settings. And of course, that's certainly newsworthy. So, before we jump into all of that, though, let's just take one moment and say hello to the beautiful people in the chat and the beautiful people over in the Discord. This Sirius Skrillum, this Bill O'Reilly quote, we'll do it live, as one of my favorite. Every so often, I'll just shout, F it, we'll do it live. And then the people who I'm actually interacting with, who have no idea what I'm referring to, think I'm just a weirdo. But I love that GIF. I love it. Hmm. Let's see here. And you guys in the regular chat, the regular YouTube chat, will be paying attention to you as well. How you doing, guys? Yeah. So let's get started with the very first item today. And that is my interview. Oh, look, I'm newsworthy. My interview
yeah,
with the CEO of Orqa FPV.
yeah. So you did an interview with the CEO of Orca. I figured we'd take a quick look at it, maybe talk a little bit about some of the things that were discussed, and then also, just kind of do a little overview of that. So I thought that was a pretty
Well,
good interview for sure.
I mean, I was there for the whole thing. So let me ask you, which parts of it I mean, and people can obviously, they can watch the edited version, which is about 30 minutes long on my channel, and the full unedited version, which went on a couple tangents that I thought maybe just cut for time, is up on my Patreon page. Link in the video description of my Patreon. You'll have to subscribe for at least 1 month to get it. But what did you think was particularly newsworthy in that interview?
Well, one thing I definitely thought it was nice that he kind of, I don't know, I feel like towards the end of it, he started to loosen up a little bit as far as like talking about the digital system and like goals and aimed latency and how it was built out. He just kind of talked for a little while about that stuff. It was nice to hear that because they've been pretty tight-lipped about that, other than a couple of things that we've heard. Um, I know also you talked some about the future-proofness of the goggle,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we have a clip maybe we could show that little bit for people, so we could look at that, and then maybe
Yeah.
look at the comments they'd had previously.
Yeah, because before we do that, if I could,
Yeah.
Blenny, because that's a little bit of a that is a little bit negative where we're about to go. Before we go a little bit negative, I do want to say that first of all, I really appreciated him coming on and giving me the interview. Obviously, I have been a little bit negative. I wasn't as positive about the FPV control as they probably would have liked. I feel like there were some pros and some cons. And I haven't been as enthusiastic about the Orca goggles as probably they would have liked. And so for him to say, hey, let's do an interview and not give that interview to somebody else certainly was a gracious gesture. And I feel like he was very, very candid, very straightforward, and gave a lot of good information. For example, one of the things he said that I think is very newsworthy is that although their video transmitter will only go to 200 milliwatts, that he said the amplifier in the transmitter could do more, and that they would want, especially in the USA where the regulations allow higher output power, to be at the highest output power allowed by regulation. Which is interesting because I had heard, and I don't know where I heard this, that it was going to be 200 milliwatts and that's it. And I was like, that's a deal breaker. I mean,
Yeah.
so like that was big. That was pretty big.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you kind of said in the interview, that's what they're going to have to do if they want to compete. But yes, I definitely think it's good to hear them talking about that and letting
Yeah.
us know that'll happen. So
Yeah. So one of the questions that came up was about the future proofing of the V1 goggles and the sort of not end of life, but end of new feature development. And let's play the clip here from the interview where that, let's play that clip. One of the things in that message, I thought I remembered saying basically that you had reached the capacity of the hardware. I don't know the specific, whether it was processor or storage or whatever, but that there basically was no more potential to continue to upgrade it.
No.
And some people said, well, that's fine, but what about...
No, the compute is the same. So one thing that didn't change between the V1 and the pilot is basically it's the same main architecture. Okay, we removed the FPGA to drive the panels, but that's like, it just the goggles are not heating up that much anymore. But the main compute and the video processor are all like literally the same thing.
So does that mean that any features released for the V2, obviously anything dependent on that digital interface wouldn't apply, but does that mean that any features or upgrades released for the Orqa FPV pilot would also be ported back to the FPV1? There's no reason why that couldn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, look at the last feature. Okay,
I'm going to pause there. He goes on to talk about the fact that the new user interface and other features were ported back to the V1, and that is weird, right, Blunty? That's a little weird.
Yeah, I think the confusing part about it was, they put out a confusing statement to start with, which you guys talk about a little bit in the interview. And then also, then Ivan, who's the CFO, put out another statement. And so that's the statement I have pulled up on Imgur here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is why everybody was confused, because, this is what you were clearly referring to in the interview, I think.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit down, he says, final update for FPV1 means that we have exploited our hardware platform and we cannot squeeze more into it. It is like when you have limited amount of RAM and disk space and you can't install a new program on your computer. It is actually a very simple thing.
And this post right here is from 28th of July. So this is from before. And Ivan, it's a little confusing because both of these guys are named Ivan. And so there's two Ivans. There's the CEO and the CFO.
Well,
and so let's go ahead.
Isn't it Ivan and
Ivan?
Surgeon?
Oh, Surgeon. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm just completely confused. I'll rewind and just do. There's another Ivan though. Who am I? I think there's another Ivan then. No, but you're right. Surgeon is the CEO. Surgeon says that, well, we had this meeting and basically, we were like, hey, we fixed all the bugs. Yay for us. Mission accomplished. And that, his take in the interview is that sort of got misconstrued by someone in marketing, who then made the statement, we're not doing any more feature release. But this statement from Ivan is very, very clear. It does seem like Surgeon walked that back in the interview and said, no, that's not true. He also seems to have said that they have the same sort of compute capability. And so if they're going to continue to develop new features for the V2, it will be backwards compatible to the V1. He was very clear about that.
Yeah, overall, I mean, it's from what he said now, if we take him at face value, the previous statements were just confused, even from Ivan. And, I think if that is the case, I think for most people, it will be a good thing, because if the V2s are getting all these updates, the V1s are going to get these back updates like he mentioned. They already did that with the first patch that they did.
Mm-hmm.
So I think overall it's a good thing. It's just continued confusing statements from them sometimes. It can be hard to parse out exactly what is going on.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, this statement is from the 28th of July, and he did this interview in an attempt to clarify the state of things as they currently are. And this is essentially what I asked him about, and he basically walked it back. It does I think what you're getting at is it does seem like a little more than just, a marketing guy went a little crazy with the Twitter feed.
Yeah, well, the marketing guy did that, and then Ivan put out this statement for clarification, and then the statement for clarification said that they were at the limit of their hardware, so it is just confusing to the user base when they do stuff like that. So again, like you said, they did clarify it, but yeah, it is just a little bit confusing. It does look like overall it will be good for people who have either goggle, because they'll continue to get support and upgrades from Orqa.
Yep, that's fantastic. Unless it means that the V2 goggles will not be getting major feature upgrades either. But it sounds like they walked it. I think what it feels like to me is like this is pure speculation. And by the way, I should say, this is all, our discussion based on the interview. And I feel like this. There wasn't any. We didn't like ask Orqa for clarification because the interview itself was the ask for clarification. Now we're just doing the postmortem. But it feels to me like they intended to end major feature development, then they got a huge backlash, and then they went, oh shit, and then they decided to see what they could do about that. And you know, with the FPV pilot coming out, they were like, yeah, okay, we'll keep it going. As long as that ends up being true, then great, good for the consumers, good for the customer.
Yeah.
It also the other sort of major newsworthy thing in the interview, I think, related to the video transmitter and specifically the output power. He was very clear that they will not be doing a kind of a TBS like you can unlock it thing, like a 1200 milliwatt hack kind of a thing. That they will be locking the VTXs in the EU to presumably 25 milliwatts, but well, it's not analog, so
he says
whatever
200.
Yeah.
In the interview, he said multiple times 200 would be the EU power. So I'm not sure if that's some kind of regulation based on digital, or if that was like
But that it would not be unlockable in the EU to a higher level, and that the closest he came to like kind of throwing a bone for people in the EU would be that if an EU person was to buy a unit from a US distributor and import it, it would have US power levels, but that's going to be pretty expensive. So there you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, full interview with all of the stuff that I thought was like main substance is on my YouTube channel. And then the full interview with almost an hour and 15 minutes, almost everything we talked about, including all the little tangents and asides, is on my Patreon page. You're more than welcome to listen to that. And we'll find out what happens. Anyway, thank you to Surgeon for coming and talking to me. I hope that, it's being pointed out in the Discord that Ivan Efimov, the Betaflight developer, is the other Ivan who I'm thinking of, not Surgeon. That's where I got a little confused. So thank you very much, Mouse, for pointing that out. All right. Next up.
All right. We've got a quick fix for an issue I just had today on the ExpressLRS TPro. Hey guys, this is for the internal ExpressLRS TPro. Basically, if you flashed your radio, or if you change the SD card contents and you redo your SD card contents, you will lose the ability to change your internal module to CRSF, so you can use your ExpressLRS. And that is a change with the way EdgeTX handles internal modules. You'll only see multi. So basically, this video shows you how to do it, but you'll basically go into the hardware menu, and there's a new setting in the hardware menu for internal module. And there you'll need to select CRSF and go back, and then you can pick the correct internal module.
Interesting. I'm watching this video from you right now.
Yeah, that's a new one I have not experienced.
I see. So interesting. They've moved some of these features into the hardware menu because presumably the code base doesn't really, they would have to make a more radical change to the code base to make it work. But that's good to know. That's a nice little PSA if you've got this radio. Thank you, Blunty, for making that.
Yeah.
We have
Speaking
another...
of speaking of Jumper TPro, we've got another thing we could talk about. We take an official statement. There's been a lot of on and off hardware issues and back and forth things with the ExpressLRS dev team with different products that have come out. But we do have, I think, our first official statement from the ExpressLRS devs. Alessandra has released a statement on behalf of the devs about the Jumper TPro ExpressLRS. And basically, he says, this is a disclosure statement regarding TPro with internal 1 watt. Jumper did not consult with the ExpressLRS team when designing this product. As a result, there's no provision for recovery from a failed flash for internal module. Zora worked with them, Radio Master worked with them to make sure it worked. And if you failed the Wi-Fi upgrade, you messed stuff up, and the pass-through flashing was not included as part of the stuff that Jumper did. So this was what we were going to bring you and present you and let you know today. But luckily, those great people over at ExpressLRS, they still found a solution. So basically, even though that was a problem, they were able to figure out with a couple different files and a flashing tool, and you open in your radio to hit a button, you can do a no solder, no extra tool solution to getting your radio fixed if you mess up that internal. So
Yeah, and that was the big deal, was that you had to solder on an FTDI adapter to pads inside the radio. That was sort of the big kicker. Many people don't have an FTDI adapter. And obviously I do. Obviously, probably you do. But
Yep.
and it's not the end of the world to have to solder an FTDI adapter to flash something. In fact, that used to be, you used to have to solder on an adapter to flash an ExpressLRS receiver at all, and it just felt like a real. To me, it felt like, number one, a step backward. And number two, this, I believe, an unforced error is the sports term for it. Because Jumper could have reached out to the ExpressLRS devs and said, hey, guys, we're working on this product. What do you think of it? And the devs would have said, hey, there's this problem. And help them solve it. The devs are, I mean, eventually they won't be able to do this for free because there'll be so many manufacturers that they'll be like, all right. But for now, they're just helping anybody. And so it just felt like a real, it just, well, I don't know what the word, I don't know what to say. It's not a sports analogy. Like, why didn't, it was unnecessary that this mistake happened, even though the mistake itself is not the end of the world. So.
For some reason, this seems to be similar to what Beta FPV does, where they like do their own thing for a little while, and then Beta FPV even does their own forks and doesn't merge back sometimes and stuff. But yeah, I'm not sure why they choose to do this, because there is free help there waiting for them if they'd like to do it.
Yeah, and here we have a case where the ExpressLRS devs, instead of going, well, good luck, Jumper customers, screw you, they sat down and they figured out a workaround. You still have to open up the radio. You still have to like push the bootloader button and release it at just the right time. But you can restore your radio from a failed flash without having to solder on an FTDI adapter, which I suppose is an improvement. But would be far better to just implement the thing that Radio Master did, where you can use pass-through flashing. And if you have a failed flash, you get it back more conveniently.
Captain Bryce says, even better, the broken design they went with was the first draft from our GitHub. So. And just communication. It's all about communication.
Recently, someone asked in my YouTube comments, why would anyone need to coordinate with the devs, right? Everything is documented. And I'm like, do you really?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a pile of documentation. Good luck implementing it into a real product. There are so many places you can go wrong.
Yep. So, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. And so before we go on, oh, were you about to go to the next story? Okay, hang on. Before you go to the next story, I just would like to make a public service announcement, because some people wondered why I was so hard on Jumper. In fact, in my original PSA, signal boost, I was like, and I probably would, not buy this radio until this problem is solved. Actually, I think I just said, don't buy this radio. And they were like, well, come on, this isn't a deal breaker problem. Why are you so hard on them? Anybody who releases an ExpressLRS product and doesn't cooperate with the devs, that product better be perfect, because if you release an ExpressLRS product and don't coordinate with the devs, and it has a problem that would have been solved if you had coordinated with the devs, I am going to look really negatively on it. And the reason for this is that people buying ExpressLRS hardware, like, it's bad for the ExpressLRS project if there's these vendors going maverick and releasing effed up products that give people a bad experience. And I want the project to succeed. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Fair enough.
All devs and all manufacturers should keep that. All you got to do is send them a dev unit and be like, hey, what do you think of this? And then when it's effed up, I'll say to the devs, yeah, go ahead.
And then provide time for feedback and make sure you go back and forth to make sure the product is good and positive before you start sending the product to customers and
before you start selling it.
Yeah.
And then when the product is effed up, one of the first things I do is I go ask Alessandro or Wesley Vardy or Captain Bry, and I say, hey, did they talk to you about this? And they go, no, first we've heard of it. And then I will just, the best you can hope for at that point is that I will not talk about your product at all.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Enough said.
So if you do like soldering FTDI adapters to stuff, and you have a Flysky FS i6, last week I believe we took a look at the i6X. There's somebody made an OpenTX patch so you could run ExpressLRS at full rates. And today we have another video from Albert Kim covering the ExpressLRS on the Flysky i6. So we talked a little bit about, was that possible and could you do it? A lot more people have this radio. So now here's a guide specifically for this radio. This is not for the faint of heart. You got to open it up and solder some stuff around, do some manual flashing, and you can definitely brick stuff as far as I know that's unrecoverable. But this is definitely a way to do it if you want to get a radio with a lot more functionality.
It's exciting because the Flysky FSi6X is not as common as the i6. So when this originally came out, it was like, oh, great. And then I was like, oh, it's just the i6X. But now that it's also doable on the i6, and N3 Frame in the chat says this radio sucks so bad the gimbals are trash. You're 100% right. This is a completely very, very bottom of the barrel radio. But two things. Number one, there are so many people out there who have bought like a bind and fly that comes with this radio, like the Wizard, and they still use it. And like that they could theoretically get much better performance out of it is valuable. Like I still remember trying to solder the XJT module inside my Turnigy 9X to try and get FreeSky telemetry. And I destroyed the radio trying to do it, but there you go. The other thing is there are places in the world where it's difficult to import stuff. And it turns out that this is actually like a really common radio for some reason. And it's just what people can get. So there is value here for a lot of people around the world. But, you know, maybe not for people with lots of money and easy access to stuff.
Yeah,
anyway.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Is that it?
That's it. All right. Next up, I did a New Year's survey. We talked about it on the news a little bit. I sent it around the groups, and we got a few responses. Not too bad. 2,200 responses, just over that. So I figured we could finally take a look and see. Disclaimer for everyone watching this: there are a lot more than 2,200 people in the hobby. This is the best we got with the amount of people that wanted to respond to the survey. So we're sharing that data with you. This is not gospel.
And it's also not like a randomly selected. I mean, you tried to get it out there in different groups. You didn't like just post it on the HD0 Facebook group and go, look, 99% of people are running HD0. Who knew?
Right.
But it is a relatively small sample. So here we go. You ready? Drum roll.
Let's do it. Let's take a look.
It's New Year's 2022.
All right. So
Now
first up,
yeah.
I think good place to start here. First up, let's take a look. So 82% of people that responded own analog, 46.2% own DJI, 19.4% own HD0, and then the rest. We've got just a smattering of other like single one-offs. I did some totaling on my own to see if there's anything substantial in there, and there was not. So
yeah, I don't think this is going to surprise a lot of people.
I don't think so either. But I will say, I think the next will surprise some people. If you could choose only one, which video link would you choose? And so results were, we got 45.9% DJI, 33.3% HD0 SharkBite, and 16.6% analog.
So that suggests that most people have at least one analog quad, but that's not where they're looking in the future. That their preference for the future would be HD0 SharkBite DJI in the first and second position.
Yeah, including people who haven't purchased it yet. Because if you check and see, there's 19% of people own HD0 SharkBite, but 33.7% of those people said they would choose that as their only video link.
That suggests a lot of sort of faith in that project, even among people who haven't actually purchased it. Or maybe they've used it, or maybe they haven't. It'll be interesting if we were to rerun this survey next year to see how many of those people have, how much lower analog is. Like how many, because I don't think many people have completely abandoned analog, right? Even people who've gone to DJI still have an analog whoop out there or something. Will there still be 82% of people who have at least one analog quad? Or is that number going to start dropping significantly?
I'm not sure. I would expect to see it start dropping for sure. I think next survey maybe we'll touch a giveaway and we'll get more people on, but
get more responses. The next question was, which radio links do you use?
Yeah, do you own and use in the last 6 months? And so at the top, as we would expect, we have TBS Crossfire. If you hover over them, they'll show you what they are because it doesn't have them. Yeah, so 55% of people have Crossfire and use it. 35% of people have ExpressLRS 2.4.
Wow.
34% have a FreeSky ACCST. More people with ExpressLRS and ACCST. I thought that was pretty interesting.
I mean, even if this is not a completely random representative sample,
yeah,
it's still pretty impressive, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tracer doing
coming
okay.
in reasonable. Yeah, 14%, not too bad.
Yeah, and
ExpressLRS
then
900 is not bad too. It goes down there at 5.8%.
Poor Ghost. Ghost deserves so much better. It really does. I don't know why more people don't use Ghost, honestly. I don't know why more people don't use it, but they don't.
Yeah. It's tough because TBS had the push from the 900, right? So TBS got the tracer out there because of 900. That's the way I look at that. They were already cemented in Crossfire, and because they were already cemented in Crossfire, they had a user base to sell tracer to. Whereas Emergent RC didn't have the same thing with the radio link. So
Ghost, ExpressLRS is in some ways, I wonder if it's a spoiler that more people would have switched to Ghost if ExpressLRS hadn't come along. But in that window of time where Tracer and Ghost had just dropped, Crossfire had been just the 500-pound gorilla in the room for years. Ghost and Tracer both drop at almost the same time. If at that point ExpressLRS had stayed more obscure, because Ghost has concrete advantages over Tracer in terms of its flexibility to be high speed or long range. And I wonder, I don't know. Do you think that Tracer people would just stuck with Crossfire and Tracer because they love TBS that much?
I definitely think it would have had a bigger market share. But I think there's also the possibility that we would have seen that groundswell from people. Like you said, there wasn't room for people to grow into Ghost when ExpressLRS was there also being cheap and an option, and a lot of people are jumping ship to ExpressLRS. So I don't know. That's difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, people thinking I'm going to go to a 2.4 gigahertz high-speed link. I feel like it's obvious why you would pick ExpressLRS or Ghost over Tracer, just in terms of the capabilities of the link, in terms of flexibility, speed, and range. And then ExpressLRS is so inexpensive that, even if you're potentially going to get a bad module or something's effed up, there's this low barrier to entry with ExpressLRS where you're like, yeah, okay, I'll spend $30 on a module and $15 on a receiver. I'll try it out. Whereas with Ghost, it's it's more expensive. Maybe that's got something to do with it.
Also, one thing we've talked about before is ExpressLRS kind of had a kick in the door because they were able to get these manufacturers building receivers that they can then sell. So there's less barrier to entry for bind and flies. There's less barrier to entry to get into stores in general, whereas Ghost, how many bind and flies still have Ghost?
Not
2. Yeah,
are there 2?
I don't know. I believe there's. I actually can't come up with any offhand that I know of.
Yeah.
So.
I
don't know how much that would have changed because how many have Tracer? Not that many. So, what would have actually changed there? I don't know. I feel like ExpressLRS has this huge way to get in that a lot of people, a lot of other links don't have. So.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that purely on the basis of performance and price, I feel like of the 3 2.4 gigahertz links, Tracer is clearly in the third position, but it is not in the third position in terms of user base. And some of that has to do with the culture, with the belief in the company, with the quality of the hardware. And I think a lot of it has to do with momentum. So many people were using Crossfire, and when the time came to switch to something faster, they're just like, I'm clearly going to buy another TBS product. But it really feels like if Ghost was going to get this kind of groundswell of support, it would have happened. And it just, I mean, we did that news item about the winners at multi-GP nationals, and half of the people in the top bracket were running Ghost, and the other half were running Tracer. It was like, there's something here. But in surveys of regular people, it just very, very few of them seem to be using Ghost.
Well, so that was ownership. Let's take a look at the last question, which is,
Oh,
if you could
okay.
only choose one, which radio link would you choose?
Okay, here we go.
And as you would expect,
I can't. I got it. Hang on. Sorry. There we go.
all right. As you would expect, ExpressLRS is the top there. Almost 50%, 46%
Wow.
of the user base responded.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we don't know how it got around. Crossfire got 32%. A lot of people still are happy to use Crossfire as their daily driver, their main thing.
Nothing wrong with it.
Some interesting results. ExpressLRS 900 on the left there with 5.6%. So
That's
not
weird.
bad for ExpressLRS 900. But then let's look at Ghost and Tracer, our other two colored numbers here. Ghost at 5% and Tracer at 5.9%.
Yeah. Interesting.
So,
These the people who would use Tracer only got to be like racers, right?
yeah, I would assume so, but I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
Yeah. It's so weird. It's so weird. There you go though. I don't know how we could remove any bias from these numbers without getting just basically many more respondents. Like,
Yeah.
I really am curious whether the popularity of ExpressLRS reflects just my audience and the places that you thought to put the survey. I mean, obviously, if we were good to go to a airplane, a fixed wing forum, it would be very, very different because they need servo support, they need PWM receivers. But in the multi-rotor world, in the FPV world, it just ExpressLRS is coming at a breakneck pace.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hopefully we can get some more next time, but at least it's kind of cool to see where everything's at. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my takeaway from this is that Ghost is really the biggest victim of ExpressLRS's dominance. People would say Crossfire is big enough to sort of punch back and has a huge amount of user base from the 2 or 3 years when they were just clearly the best control link, no questions asked. And so I think they're feeling the pinch, but Ghost, I think, really took a much bigger hit because ExpressLRS is such a direct competitor. And as long as you're going to jump ship from Crossfire, let's say you're a person who's like, okay, I'm going to try something else. Well, should I try Ghost or should I try ExpressLRS? And it feels like for whatever reason, a lot of those people are going to ExpressLRS. Anyway.
Yeah.
Chad Rains FPV in the chat says we've sold a total of 5 Ghost products at Progressive RC. So we started donating some to ExpressLRS devs so they can improve the code for it.
Yep.
It's tough. That's tough. I mean, so, like, I don't want to harp on this, especially as we've only got 20 minutes left in the stream, but, like, Blunty, just be honest with me. Like, at some point, like, when you buy a product like a Ghost receiver or a Ghost module as a user, you're betting on the future of that project, right?
Sure.
You know, what do you think these numbers mean for the future of Ghost? Like,
I mean, I don't know. I think that's been visible from the amount of I troubleshoot all day. You troubleshoot a lot. Like, how many of your questions are ExpressLRS versus how many of your questions are Ghost or Tracer? And I don't think it's because it's easier. I think it's because there's just not very many people that are firing up a new Ghost system or firing up a new Tracer system.
Yeah.
I think that's just how it goes. So I don't know. My opinion is that I think these numbers do reflect what I see on a daily basis, at least with the community that we see and the new pilots that I see come in. And I don't know. I think here's the question. And MatchTech said this a little bit longer, or a little bit earlier in the Discord is the issue is how long is a $10 receiver viable or $15 receiver viable, right? ExpressLRS is sucking the air out of Ghost and TPS, but is the cheap hardware viable long term? Will people continue to be okay with buying that, that style of hardware and that cheapness, or will hardware costs come up at all? Will the other companies be able to pull hardware down at all? Like, was TBS ever considered dropping under $25? They already did drop for R9.
They did that for R9. I mean, there's a limit to how low they can get it.
Right.
There's no question that they would devalue their own brand.
Yeah.
And they probably have higher overhead and operating expenses than a company like Happy Model, probably.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, there's always the possibility for somebody like an Axis Flying or a Maytech to come along and make a quote unquote high quality, more expensive module. But if you're somebody like an Immersion RC or a TBS, there isn't the possibility for you to cut all your overhead out and make a cheap, shitty module. And some people want to pay $10 for a cheap, shitty module and roll the dice. So,
yeah, it just depends on, is there going to be like how much gap? I don't know that there's any gap between an ES24 TX Pro that's $30, $35 and a $70 TBS module, like or $70 Ghost module. It's like, I don't know that that's going to be a thing that's going to work forever, you know, or work for very long at all. I
would stipulate that the QC at Immersion RC is better than the QC at Happy Model.
By two.
Right. That's what, you know, and that's a that's a shitty attitude on some level, but there's so many people out there who, and that's one of the things that's hard when I review products, because there are some manufacturers who are like, why don't you in your reviews value good quality more? Why don't, like, for example, and no, Axis Flying didn't say this to me, but they didn't respond at all. And, you know, but I could imagine them going, why did Bardwell pan us for our high price and not be more positive about our good quality? And I'm like, well, because the people who are buying products just don't really value that. I'm sorry. They don't. They don't care.
Yeah, especially with something that's not shoving 50 amps through it, flying through the air. You know, like there's a difference between a receiver and a TX unit and then an ESC, you know, so there's also, So.
And is it a race to the bottom? I mean, maybe, but like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be like Moses parting the Red Sea? Stop the race to the bottom. Everyone care about quality.
You could say it's a race to the bottom, but I think, as we've seen already, people have already started to identify beta FPV and some of the Happy Model stuff. And then, you know what I mean? That we're seeing those companies get called out and clearly, not be as popular. So hopefully we can see that continue.
Chad Rains FPV says, if Ghost hardware came ready to go with ExpressLRS, I would leave Crossfire tomorrow, especially if they got the Atto Duo working. We need diversity receivers from ExpressLRS. That's interesting, and that's obviously not what Immersion RC wants to do. Like Immersion RC bundling with Orqa right now, doing things like the Orqa FPV control, that seems to be their move, that they're going to sort of partner up with Orqa and try and sort of carve out their niche for Ghost. But I could imagine theoretically a world in which they make that decision. I mean, how much of their profit is their hardware? Like if they were to cut the price down, like I think their investment in the Ghost control link itself is a bigger thing than just the development of the hardware. So, anyway, interesting. Thanks for doing that survey, Blunty.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at another little survey from Whooptopia. I got permission from Mr. Hyper to share a couple little pie charts here for you from Whooptopia race firmware. So he was able to get 39 pilots to chime in on what firmware they were flying. And we got that little breakdown here. And then the elite class, we got the breakdown as well. So I thought this was pretty cool to see. I think a lot of people are questioning, like, what firmware should they run for racing, or who's using what, or how great is ME Flight or Quicksilver, like all these different options that people have. I think this is kind of interesting because it looks like the top racers are flying on Betaflight.
Yeah, I was surprised that EmuFlight wasn't more represented, because EmuFlight has specific Whoop related features borrowed from Silverware and developed themselves. But it seems like, for whatever reason, people are, especially at the top, no one was flying EmuFlight at the top. They're flying Betaflight. Is that because Betaflight flies so good, or is that just because that's what everybody uses, sort of, in the culturally? Don't know.
Right. Yeah, from what I hear, I know the 4.3 RC guys, I think, were running, some of the presets and doing some of the link smoothing stuff from 4.3 and get some of the benefits there. So, I'm not too sure, but it is interesting to see that the fastest people in the country racing Whoops are using Betaflight.
Yeah. All right. Well, good to know. Interesting.
Yeah.
Some more interesting specs there, stats rather. Next up, Blunty. This is this is only newsworthy because of what an incredible amount of work XJet did. And you know, if anybody in this hobby doesn't know XJet, yikes. He's been doing this longer than some of you have been alive. And he does occasionally, he sits down at the whiteboard and does these amazing technical discussions. And this one is about how HD0 and DJI actually work under the hood. He breaks down all the parts, the circuitry, the technology, and then of course we end up at the whiteboard and we do a big discussion.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before. Chris Rosser did a series where he did one video on DJI, one video on HD0, and he kind of did a little bit of a breakdown, but it could be a little bit confusing, I think, for people who don't quite understand how all the systems work. And I know people learn different ways, so I thought this was interesting. This is more like a stream of consciousness walkthrough from the beginning to the end and kind of pull the system together and see how it all works. So yeah, I thought this was pretty cool. And obviously Bruce knows his stuff, so it's pretty cool to see him put it all to use in a video like this.
Yeah, yeah. It says a lot about Bruce's breadth of his knowledge and the depth that he could just sit down, and it really feels like he just sat down and talked for 45 minutes. It doesn't feel like he went off a script, or maybe he had an outline, I don't know, but he really feels like the kind of guy who could just sit down and give you a 40-minute conversation or a 40-minute lecture about this topic, and is a lot of good information there if you're interested in going a little deeper into how these things work.
Yeah.
Yeah. All righty. Cool. Next up, we have Intro to Drone Racing.
Yeah, an intro to FPV drone racing. So we've got, this is a video from Mako Reactra. She presented this at the 2021 Boston Drone Film Festival and got permission finally to put it up on YouTube. So I thought we would, link it for people so they could check it out. If you wanted to tell anybody you know, like, hey, what is drone racing and how does it work and stuff? How do you get into it, maybe, for people who are interested in how to do it? But this is basically a primer on everything drone racing, from how you start to what a racing league is, how you train, what gear you use, what the elements of a racetrack are. Pretty cool little presentation she's put together here. So
yeah, it looks like it was maybe 45-minute session at the film festival, perhaps.
Yeah, like a presentation slide.
Yeah, but there's a lot of it. It's easy to find like a 10-minute intro to drone racing. That's been done, and it's also, there are some like 8-hour intro to FPV stuff. It's nice to see something here in the middle ground, and Mako Reactra is a great presenter as well. She's not a shabby racer, to be honest.
Yeah, I think she's also a teacher for her day job, so this kind of fits in with that too.
Yeah, that's correct. She teaches. She was in the Flow State film, talking about using FPV in education. So she is I don't know if I think she's in elementary school, but I'm not sure. Maybe high school.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Teacher. So really cool. It's out there, and it'd be fun for you to watch if you're just getting started in FPV. If you know about freestyle or cruising and you're looking about get into racing, or if you just want to help introduce somebody to what you do. It's good stuff.
Pretty cool.
All right. Next up, we have an easier way to flash EdgeTX.
Yes.
EdgeTX. What's EdgeTX, Blunty?
EdgeTX is basically cutting edge OpenTX. So if you OpenTX is a little bit stagnant and wasn't accepting PRs fast enough, so they're like, hey, let's make a new fork and let's get everything together and make sure we're doing all the new features and supporting everybody. That's what EdgeTX is. So EdgeTX is basically like, fancy OpenTX. But,
yeah. So if you have a controller and the controller runs OpenTX, by putting EdgeTX on it, you get a little bit more, some bug fixes and feature upgrades. The disparity is relatively small today, but it's just getting bigger and bigger as the EdgeTX devs just keep extending their lead. And so, frankly, I think that's where people should be. Unless you're just like, I don't want to flash my radio. What are you talking about? Okay, fine. You don't have to.
As an example, we talked about the internal TPro earlier, the internal ExpressLRS TPro, and the same with the Zorro. Those are both possible because of EdgeTX adding in the ability for the internal module to talk over CRSF protocol. So
yeah.
stuff
So
like that.
the kind of things, some radios are starting to come with EdgeTX already on them, notably Radio
Yes.
Master. And did the Jumper TPro come with EdgeTX already on it?
It did, because I think the EdgeTX is the only thing that supports that internal module. So.
All right. So EdgeTX is good. And if you want EdgeTX, but flashing EdgeTX can be a little bit of a pain. I've got some tutorials about how to do it, but this is a new way of doing it. And the cool thing about this is it's a browser-based tool.
Yeah. So basically, just like some of the other things we've looked at, like ESC-configurator and similar tools, Betaflight Chrome configurator and stuff. This is a way just in your browser to use both SD card settings and radio settings and firmware flashing right in your browser. So couldn't be much easier.
Yeah. Very cool. Don't have to download anything. Like there's a EdgeTX flashing app that you have to download and install. And I'm like, I don't want to download and install something. Now you don't have to. They've got a flashing tool, and then in addition there is a place to download your SD content, and it'll automatically update your SD card content. Very cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty. That's linked in the video description in the show notes, like all of our stuff. Next up, the Glados voice pack.
Yeah. We've had previously, I think people have seen a Portal voice pack. This is a themed specifically for Glados voice pack by Verix, and he's made a kind of special solution for this voice pack here. So basically, he's gone in with an AI.
Sorry to talk over you there, Blunty.
No problem. But he's basically gone in with an AI to generate all these sounds and voices and stuff.
Now you say an AI. What do you mean by an AI?
Basically, like a AI designed chat thing, like a voice. Well, I don't know what you call it.
So I didn't realize what they were talking about. I thought that there was just somewhere out there a voice synthesizer that would do a Glados voice for you. And I was like, oh, so he just typed in all this stuff and had it generate the sound files. But you're saying, like, I'm familiar with tools that will take voice snippets and then basically deep fake a voice. Are you saying that's what he did?
Yeah, I think that's how the website for it works. So like it's trained, it's called 15.ai. It's like a website you can go to, and it has models that are trained basically to generate from the text the actual voice. So instead of voice snippets and cuts and like somebody making manual stuff, it's actually using an AI to generate behind it to get that stuff.
Wow. So do they let you upgrade? Oh, wow. There's all kinds of things. But you can't like upload your own voice files. Like, could I have it scan my YouTube channel and then make a Bardwell voice? And then people could just make me say whatever they want?
Not on this website, I don't believe so.
Oh,
There are, I'm sure one of your lovely members knows how to do that with one of the, I'm sure there's a million projects that you can go and dig through sound files and stuff. I don't know. I got into a little bit of that, but
let's see. Oh, it's going to take a minute, isn't it? Now what? Oh, here we go.
Welcome to the FP News.
Oh.
Welcome to the FP News.
Oh, interesting.
Welcome to the FP News.
Oh, that's not bad. What if I just do that? That's really cool. It's not bad.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty good.
What are these emotional contextualizers?
Welcome to the FPV News.
Holy shit!
Welcome to the FPV News.
Wow!
Welcome to the FPV News.
Wow! Wow! That's really something. That sounds really natural. Wow. Can I add the emotional contextualizer? I don't know how that works. Wow. Wow. This must have taken him so much work to make so many of these.
Right. Yeah, to go through them and pick them and then download them.
Welcome to the FPV News. Welcome to the FPV News. Welcome to the FPV News.
That's really extraordinary. Oh, I got to do one more. I'm sorry, chat. I know this is not really why you come to the news, just to watch me screw with this. I got to do one more. Hang on.
Welcome to the FPV news. Welcome to the FPV news. Welcome to the FPV news.
That's not as good, but that's really, really something. I'm really happy to have found this. So thanks for that. Anyway, going back.
All right.
Going back. The voice pack. There's a GLaDOS voice pack.
Yes.
Which would you put on your radio? The GLaDOS or the Bardwell voice pack?
I have my radio muted.
Very political answer. Okay. Next up. What's next, Blunty?
Okay, so next up we've got some videos by Chris Rosser. So we wanted to take a quick look at Chris Rosser's videos. He's got a video about BLHeli32 settings, and then he's got a video where he pitted BLHeli32 versus BlueJay, and then basically picked his best settings between the two. So I figured we'd link both videos just in case anybody wanted to check them out. But the versus video is kind of the summary of the two.
Yeah.
And he goes through with his test bench that he has there. And
yeah, he's built this test bench, getting data.
Yeah.
And he basically, so you guys should just watch the video. I'm not going to like show all the stuff. It's great testing of responsiveness with PWM frequency, efficiency. And at the end of the video, he has best recommended settings. But to understand how he got there and why, the video is well worth a watch. But he's got the head. Go ahead.
Sorry. My addendum for that is just going to be that I would personally, I'm still in the 23-degree timing camp, and that is just because you'll see in the video the gains seem very small for the chance of desync increase. Right. We've always decided 23 timing or 22.5 on BLHeliS. Which is medium high, makes the most sense because you have the in-between between efficiency and torque and also protection from desyncs.
Yeah.
And so I'm in the world, like he says, the desync protection is a strong one for 23 degrees, but he still recommends 16. I'm in the more like, I am on the 23 degrees camp, and if everything goes great and you really need a difference, then you can go to 15. So
yeah. I mean, the difference between all of them is extremely small. 0.06 milliseconds, I guess. And then like you've got maybe 0.01 of a millisecond difference, perhaps not even that much. And obviously anything is something, but yeah, for those who want to get a little more responsiveness, that 16 degrees seems to be the place to be. But yeah, great data. And then he compared BLHeli32 versus BlueJay, which it runs on BLHeliS hardware, and surprisingly, BlueJay actually won under some circumstances by a fair margin.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, when he pitted them exactly the same, BlueJay seemed to do pretty well. But even when he gave them kind of their own best settings, BlueJay still came out on top, with acceleration. But BLHeli32 had slightly faster braking. And then obviously, BLHeli32 also had the variable PWM when BlueJay did not. So.
Right. I have to wonder how much of this is that specific ESC and not so much the firmware. The hardware of that ESC, the FETs, maybe it had better, FET drivers, or I don't know. I'm just making up terms at this point.
I asked him about dead times too and how that would play in, and like, if some hardware needs different dead times and that sort of thing. So it would be interesting to see, how many more factors come into play there.
The takeaway, though, is that if you are using BLHeliS ESCs for probably budgetary reasons, but maybe you've got a micro quad or an all-in-one flight controller with a BLHeliS ESC, there is no reason to assume that you're getting like much worse performance than BLHeli32. BLHeli32 has some nice features that are desirable, but especially if you're running the BlueJay firmware on BLHeliS ESCs, you can get pretty good and sometimes better performance than BLHeli32.
Absolutely. And so moving from that, thanks to Chris Rosser for that. We've also got some stuff from Ivan Efabov. He's the guy who did the presets over on Betaflight and does some more Betaflight jazz, a lot of different stuff over there. And he did some comparison because people talk about BLHeli32 test code or 32.8 versus 32.8.3 versus 32.7. So we've got, a couple different options here. 32.7 was the recommended one for a while. 32.8 came out and released, but people had mixed results with the different settings on that. And then 32.8.3 is new test code that adds by RPM and cleans up some of the signal traces a little bit. And so he went through and tested them out and saw what he actually saw.
And what did he find?
Basically, that the test code seemed to be a big improvement over 32.8, and he didn't see any reason not to run the test code, basically. So
yeah, the 32.8.3 test code.
And then he also did this video, which just came out today, which I thought was pretty interesting. Something a lot of racers, I think, maybe don't think about, is that what if you're not racing as fast as you can because your motors are jumping back and forth because of your link quality and your PIDs. So basically, his point is that if your motors are ramping up constantly from 90 to 100 to 90 to 100 because of, your tune's not perfect and things are shaky and whatever's happening, then you're not going to be able to get the most speed you could if instead of everything running at 98% and going back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
And he goes through, the three major things, which are your presets, your tuning preset, your RC link preset, and then your RC smoothing presets. And if you set all three of those that are correct for your quad, you should be able to prevent that. And then he shows some examples of motor traces between the two, where you can basically clearly see that some of them are going slower. And when he fixes it, he can actually get more average motor percentage on the quad.
And the reason this is specifically useful in Freedom Class, Freedom Class, for those who don't know, is a spec racing league where you race with basically a 6S quad on a 3S battery. So you have whatever 1900 kV motors or whatever they are. There's more requirements. You can look it up. But Freedom Class racers are much more likely to just be at 100% throttle for big portions of the track. Whereas, traditional 6S multi-GP racing, even the fastest racers aren't hitting 100% throttle for extended periods of time, most of them. But in Freedom Class, they oftentimes are at 100%, except in the corners. And so it's not just about clean lines, but about getting the most speed. And you can't just I'm going to go to a higher kV motor. You have to squeeze the most performance out of that exact build. So this is pretty cool.
Yeah, neat stuff. I appreciate he's making some videos recently, and hopefully we'll get some more of those out of him because he's got some good insight as a dev.
Yeah. Alrighty, now to what might be my favorite news segment. It's Barely News, where we go through. They're not really news, but we still think you want to know about them. Let's start, Blunty, with this one.
So first up, a French tourist has been jailed for 8 years, unfortunately, over drone photos he took in Iran at the Turkmenistan-Iran border. So obviously PSA, don't take videos where you don't know you're supposed to. Because he basically has been prosecuted as a spy, and they think he's working for an enemy government. So unfortunately he's being held, and currently they're saying he's going to be jailed for over 8 years. So that is unfortunate.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Don't go to Iran. Don't go to the Iranian border and take drone shots, I think is the takeaway. Yes. Yeah. Fair enough. It sucks to be him. Right?
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Not much we could do, but hope that they work it out. With it's France and Iran basically have to work it out. So, yeah.
Okay. Next up. Wow, that was a real bummer. Next up.
That's why we're going through them quick. Next up.
Let's move on to something else.
Next up, I got submitted this video. I thought it was pretty cool. This is from last year, or I guess the year before now. From a light show that they did for a drone light show. And I thought this was pretty neat because we've talked a little bit about behind the scenes and gone through the how a drone show works. But this is pretty much the most in-depth that I've seen, where they kind of hang out with them for a couple of days. They go through the pre-show and look at the programming and talk about how the layout works. And you kind of even get to see them sync up and you get some explanation. So pretty neat stuff. And if you're ever interested in drone show information, pretty cool to see.
Yeah. a lot of times when we talk about drone shows, people ask, like, you know, how are they coordinated? How long do they stay in the air? Like, they just want the details. And this is one of the most in-depth public videos I've seen showing that information. So thank you, Blunty, for finding it. Or did someone send it in to us, Blunty? Did you find it?
That was submitted. Yeah, that was submitted to the news.
Nice. Nice. Thank you to the guy who submitted it.
Next up. Yeah, unfortunately, DJI has allegedly obscured ties to Chinese government investment. Basically, the U.S. and the FCC and everybody was like, "You don't have any investment by the Chinese government, right?" And they're like, "No, of course not. We're DJI. It's all private investment and nothing like that." And then basically, after some digging, they were able to figure out that they do have investment by basically the state government or an arm of the state government. And so it's not looking great for DJI currently. There's already a bunch of holes by the Defense Department and other things, and the FCC's not looked at them great, and this possibly may change that for the worse even more. So kind of keep on the lookout for that.
Good thing all of our stuff is made by Caddx, except the goggles. And coming soon, the Caddx DJI FPV goggle.
Good thing none of our stuff has GPS in it.
Yeah, good point. Oh, man, I am happy any day I see Peter Strupel on my feed. What has he done now, Blunty?
So previously we looked at Peter Strupel. You'll see here he had that drone backpack we looked at with a whole bunch of drone motors, and it was little ducks and stuff, and he didn't really use duck mechanics that well. And it kind of worked.
Poor little feet just going, "Please get me in the air."
Yeah, so he was like, "Well, I got to do it right." So he went and did it right, and he did some studying on duct mechanics and tried to figure out, what the best ducting would be and how much prop he needed and everything. Got it set up, and he basically built a successful homemade paramotor. So pretty cool.
Nice. Now most paramotors just have one big prop. Like, is there actually an advantage to doing what he did?
I'm not sure. Actually, I mean, I guess if the prop went out, you'd still have three. Maybe you'd start spinning, though. I don't know if you could control that somehow.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't know. It's pretty cool, though. I think it'd be a lot harder to build a single prop than it would be to do these four if you're doing this at home. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so he's running. This is not a gasoline engine. He's running off of like brushless motors, like on a plane or something.
Yep,
oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
Yep.
A lipo fire in the air. I guess it's no worse than a gasoline fire in the air. Neither are particularly good. Alrighty. Oh no, not more ExpressLRS news, Blunty. I guess it's a good thing. It's barely news.
Yeah, and it's barely news for a reason, and we'll explain why. So this is FLRC support, and you might be like, "Holy crap, this is huge!" But it won't be coming for a little while, so we're gonna hold off being super excited until it comes. But FLRC is basically the other version of the other protocol on the LoRa chips. So we've talked before about Tracer is just FLRC, and then they've added the LoRa feature, or they're working to add that LoRa feature, and then Ghost has both FLRC and LoRa. So this is FLRC support for 2.4 gigahertz, but it does look like this will be a large enough change that it will not come until 3.0. But rest assured that in 3.0,
more shots fired at Tracer, presumably.
Yes, soon enough. Good. Soon enough, we'll have some more advances by ExpressLRS. Very
exciting. This one, I got so many submissions of this one, Blunty. So many people wanted to share this with the news.
Yeah, for sure. So some people have seen Leonardo da Vinci's like basically screw helicopter, and this is a screw drone basically. So they took four of those helicopter blades, they modeled it, and they wanted to see if it could fly. And all their testing was like, wow, this actually works. So they built it out, and it seems to work. It's pretty cool.
That's insane. It's actually flying. It's insane. Oh my god, it's got so much. The weight of the props is so far from the center of mass that if it were to like try to do a flip, it feels like it would just tear itself apart.
Yes. But, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it's very agile, but it does. It's pretty cool that it can fly.
Yeah, it is. Leonardo da Vinci was right all along. Good to know. All right. Well, we
All
got
right.
one more topic, Blunty. We haven't done a rant in a while. We're gonna do a no. Oh, hang on. I don't know what my problem is.
Oh no.
I can fix this because I have the power. And today's rant is going to be about TVS diodes.
Yes. Yeah,
Should we
talked a little
explain what
bit.
those are first?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about these in the past, but we actually had a conversation before, I think before a news or something. I was talking to you a little bit about why ESCs die, right? We talked a little bit about, there's basically two main reasons we could think of that ESCs would die. Either the FETs are going to die from over amperage, or they're going to die from over voltage, right?
Yes, correct.
And so one of the ways that you can prevent over voltage, which seems to be the more common failure method, since we're not seeing those FETs desolder from boards and that sort of thing.
I agree.
One of the easy ways to prevent from these voltage spikes is to use a TVS diode. And a TVS diode essentially just has a clamping voltage, from my understanding, and then around that voltage, it starts to pull that voltage into heat. It converts it into heat and then dumps it out of the diode at the capacity that the diode has to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I said to you that I don't think the amp rating is what's killing most of our ESCs, because the amp rating is basically related to heat dissipation. As long as the ESC stays cool enough that it doesn't literally melt the solder, like I have seen cases in the past where a very underspec ESC literally desoldered the FETs, and the FET floated on the liquid solder and touched another FET, and then the fire came out. Obviously, that's an extreme case, but I think that most ESCs today are overspec'd and don't melt from overcurrent, but they more pop from overvoltage. That's my theory. I don't know if that's true, but that's my theory. And you were like, well, why isn't everybody using TVS diodes, whose specific job is to protect from overvoltage?
Yeah, it seems like the logical thing to do. Actually, if you want to pull up Leslie Vardy put a little test that he did in the chat, which is pretty cool, and shows why a capacitor is also extremely important.
So we're going to show this, but yeah, let's talk about that for a second. And that is, like, capacitors. People are getting the message that they need to use capacitors, and capacitors sort of even out the peaks and dips and sort of pull them towards the middle. But a big enough voltage spike can still get through a capacitor. That's the problem, the weakness of a capacitor. So here is Wesley Vardy's data. This is a throttle punch and drop. What are we looking at here, Blunty?
Yeah, I'm just trying to check all the voltages here. It looks like this is a 5 volt that he was doing. I'm just trying to confirm that's correct, but it does look like
Delta V is 23 volts here.
Yep.
10.6 volts is B, and A is 12.4 volts. Channel 1 is 5 volts. Are we looking at spikes? Wesley Vardy, help us understand what we're looking at here.
Yeah, I believe we're looking at, I think we're looking at spikes. I'm just trying to make sure we have the correct scale.
Why does Delta V say 23 volts, but channel 1 says 5 volts? Wesley says this is AC, not DC. Regardless, here's no cap and no TVS diode. Here is a TVS diode only. Right. And I can't even really see what I'm looking at here. Why is this grayed out? Is that the after? Here's the cap.
Yeah, I'm not 100%
without the TVS diode, and the cap with the TVS diode, where it's sort of shaved off at the top there.
Yeah, there's clearly gains there from the TVS diode, and obviously huge gains from the cap. I just want to make sure we have that range correct. But
Wes says this is just showing the spikes. There is no DC offset. So we're only seeing the spikes.
Gotcha. So our difference, so I guess our total delta is what we're looking at is like top spike to the bottom of the spike, right?
Oh, that's the delta V. So with no cap and no TVS diode, the swing, if you will, was a total of sort of 23 volts from bottom to top. And then the TVS diode alone brought that down to 18.8 volts. Oh, and look here, Blunty, -10 to +12. This is the negative and positive swing. Okay. -9 to +9, -5 to +5, and then finally -4 to +2. So, thank you for that, Wes. The takeaway, though, is people should be using TVS diodes on their builds.
Yeah, I mean, I
Right?
think so. The cost of them seems very low. Everybody's already gotten in the world where we're okay buying caps, right? So
Yeah.
like you mentioned, so it seems like we should maybe be okay buying TVS diodes.
So, for example, you could pick up a FETTech spike absorber. I think this is, I mean, you could just buy TVS diodes from DigiKey or Mauser if you wanted, but having them put on this PCB like this is awfully convenient. The other one that I always point out is the Rush Power Filter Board from Rush Racing, which is of similar design and includes capacitors as well. I always combine my spike absorber with a capacitor, but the Rush Power Filter Board has capacitors on board and has some TVS diodes. So that is what y'all should be doing.
Yeah, try to smooth some of those spikes out. Maybe you won't lose as much stuff. It's part of why I run 4S, and I have lost a piece of electronics in a long time. I don't know if that's because I run 4S and I'm far enough away from the voltage limits, or just because I don't fly hard enough. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that maybe is part of it because I'm not running near that voltage limit. So
yeah, maybe, yeah. Like the FETs that are used, let's say they're rated for 30 volts or 35 volts or whatever they're rated for. A manufacturer might they're going to use those FETs, and if you're running 4S and you're down at 18 volts, you have more headroom, right? Obviously.
yeah.
And Ian Madstech points out as well, this is especially important on digital builds because those voltage spikes can also fry the TX and RX lines of your Caddx Vista and your air unit. But the air unit is more commonly powered from a regulator, which gives some filtering.
Yeah.
So like, and even if you just want clean video, a capacitor is still important for clean video on a digital build. So, yeah, Tiago Ramos says not easy to get the right TVS diodes on normal suppliers. You should just buy ready-made modules. I agree. So, alrighty, guys.
Cool.
There you go. That's gonna wrap it up for today.
All right. Went a little long, but not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. Especially considering we're going to be gone for the next 2 weeks. So I'll give them a little extra.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. Definitely make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it when we do come back. I also have a live stream clips channel, which is linked in the video description. If you want to catch up on clips of live stream clips, highlights, or news articles that you might have missed, go ahead and on over there and get subscribed. And definitely keep sending those submissions to news@fpvknowitall.com for stuff that we can get when we come back. We'll have a bunch of stuff.
Also, don't forget to give the channel a like, or the video a like, and leave a comment when it's over. So
there's one more thing we got to do though. We got to get the super chats. We got a couple super chats. We always save those till the end at the news. But Propped Up FPV, thanks for £5. Propped Up wants a shout out for his first video, please. Propped Up FPV. All right, Propped Up FPV. Big shout out for posting your first video. I assume it's Propped Up FPV on YouTube. Let's see. Is it on YouTube or is it on like, TikTok like the cool youngins like to do? Propped Up FPV, 6 subscribers. Boom, first video posted. Let's see. Roast him. Let's roast him. No. There you go. First video. That's not bad for a first video. He's cooking. Oh yeah, he's moving. Got a little flippy flop. More flippy flops than I did the first time I flew. Yeah, all right. Awesome. Congratulations, Propped Up FPV. Thank you for the super chat. Dan Z says, do you want a good laugh and see an example of a Betaflight 4.3 flyaway? Good reminder to be careful. Dan Z did share this with me. Basically, he sets the quad down, he arms it, and as soon as he arms it, he goes straight to the moon. My best guess is that he has an older version of Betaflight on his quad and a newer configurator, and that messed up his config. If you're using a Betaflight pre-release stuff, be very, very careful about mismatched configurator and firmware, and be very, very careful about pasting in your CLI dumps, especially as they go into RCs. Make sure you're up to date on both. But that's
just
the
a,
risk of RCs.
yeah, just a quick reminder there. If you put your air mode on a switch, it can help a lot of times with diagnosing those early issues. If you're not sure if your filters are horrible or something else is going on, or your build's weird, one of the things I like to do is put the air mode on a switch and then arm and take off and then see when you flip air mode on in the air how crazy it gets, right? Because then you can get an idea of like how much of that noise is coming through. So.
Nice, nice. Thank you, Coelho FPV, for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Ivan Efimov, for a $5 super chat. Thanks for mentioning his channel. Hey, Ben, thanks for making awesome content, right?
Yeah.
And MK, thanks for a $2 super chat, who wants to know, where does the extra volts come from in a spike? The extra volts, like the motors are generators, right? So if you take a motor and you just spin it, like with a drill, you'll get AC volts. And you could like charge a cell phone or whatever. If you spin at the right speed and generate the right voltage, you need to rectify it to DC and so forth. But a motor is basically just a generator in reverse. So when the motor decelerates or is pushed by the wind or anything like that, it can create voltage spikes. That's not the only thing, but
I was going to say also we're constantly generating electromagnetic feedback to read the third arm of the motor, basically, to know where the motor's position is on the zero crossing.
Yeah. So there's in any circuit with inductive and capacitive elements, there's going to be sort of ebbs and flows of current, and therefore corresponding ebbs and flows of voltage. And an electronic, a computer device that has PWM signals in it, which are constantly going up, down, up, down, up, down, has tons of inductive and capacitive elements. So there's just ample opportunity for there to be voltage spikes all over the damn place. It doesn't just come from motor breaking in 3 frame, but that is a place it can come from. Anyway, that's going to do it. Folks, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you for coming out. And thank you, Blunty, as always. Happy flying, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy. See ya.